Hi everybody, so it's me Taji and I'm back again for another book review. As I told you in the last video, I was going to be starting the Nalini Singh's Changeling series, and I did. And I wanted to wait until I read, after I finished the first book, I was sort of like, I'm still not fully grasping what's going on in this series. So let me read the second book in the series. So I'm going to review the first two books in the series, and then we'll talk about it because for me, it's a little bit complicated to explain and a little bit complicated to understand. Okay, so it reads as a typical paranormal romance. What is very appealing to me is that it's a fated mate trope, and I love fated mates because I love the mating bond. I love when the alpha male can sense his mate and can sense her emotions and is connected to her and is focused on her, and will lay down his life to protect her because she is the most important thing. I love that. So you're getting that in spades in this book. You're also getting, okay, so let's talk a little bit about what the story is about and see if I can explain this in a way that makes sense. The story is set in California, in the San Francisco area. It seems to be that it's a futuristic dystopian society in which you have two domineering populations. You have the Psi population, and it seems that the Psi are the ruling population. And if you think of them as like Men in Black, or like think of them as like, what was his name in The Matrix that would go after Neo, like Mr. Richardson or whatever his name was, the like guy with the glasses and like black, very crisp suits and ties, and they're very like stoic and have no emotion. That's the Psi population. They have no emotions. They don't show any emotions. They have no feeling. They're very robotic. There is no feeling whatsoever. So they don't have children in the traditional way. If they want to have children, they pick somebody who has an ideal genetic makeup, and they say, we sign a contract and you're going to share this amount of DNA and I'm going to contribute this amount of DNA, and we have children. And they're created in a lab, and once the children come along, we raise them half part of the time, whatever is based on the contract, and then the children then go to this organization, the PsychNet or whatever, because they demonstrate this potential. And they have, from what I'm understanding, is that there are different types of Psi, and based on the potential at a 10 or higher that you demonstrate, you are plucked to then be trained to fully master that potential. So from what we've been introduced to so far in this book, Sascha is the Sascha Duncan. So she is part of the rural Psiling, or Psi community, and she recognizes that there's something wrong with her, that she's flawed because she is demonstrating that she feels emotions. And she is worried that if anybody finds this out, they're going to send me to this rehabilitation center to complete a psychic erasure of anything that she was, so that it'll take away all of those emotions. And so she then, through this, through Slave to Sensation, she then meets Lucas Hunter, and Lucas Hunter he's on the second group, which is the Changeling, and the Changeling group are part animal and part human. And Lucas is part of the leopard pack, and he is the alpha male, so it's his pack, he's the dominant one, and they can change into either whatever their other alpha side, whatever their animal side is, or they can stay in human form. So we've also been introduced to the wolf pack, so you've got wolves that are half wolf and half human, and they can change into either of those depending on what the situation calls for. So this book is basically their story, and like I said, it gives you all the feels. You've got alpha male, you've got pack, you're part of the pack, you're starting to understand how the pack operates and the hive mind that goes along with the pack. You're understanding that Sascha is trying to break away from, she's coming to terms with the emotion that she's experiencing, and Lucas is bringing more and more of that out of her, but it's very dangerous. They live in dangerous times, and there also is this back plot that there's a murder that occurred, and changeling females are being murdered, and so they're trying to figure out who's doing it. And so the Psi population is saying, we don't have emotions. Murder is an emotion-filled crime. We would never do that. It's a Psi, it's a changeling. Only they would do that. So they're then working together to try to figure out what has happened with this murder. So that's this. So I like it because you've got two plot lines. You've got their story, which culminates in the end of this book, Sascha and Lucas. And so you see them developing and what happens with them, and how she comes to terms with her feelings for him, and how he comes to terms with the fact that she's his fated mate and what that means. And he knows that she's the mate. She doesn't know. She doesn't have to accept this bond, but then that would leave him like bereft and alone and isolated, because once they mate for life. And so they say it's not like marriage. This is not a marriage. You don't have divorce. Mating is forever. So you've got their story with their mating, and then there's the subplot of understanding the dynamic in the society of the dynamic between the Psi and the Changeling society. This overall governing council of the Psi, and how the Psi impact the world, and all of this infighting and manipulating and lying and being money hungry, and how that's impacting the society. So you're learning about that, as well as you've got this psychotic murderer that's going on in the background that's killing people. So we're trying to figure out what happens with that. So that plot line is going to continue through. So overall, I gave this a 4 out of 5 star. It's for what it is. I appreciated it. I liked it. Would I want to do a reread of this? Probably not. Like, one time is good for me, but again, I'm just now getting into it. I tend to do this. So I might say that now, and then as I get into the story, I might be like, oh my God, this is the most amazing story ever. But right now, that's how I'm feeling. Okay, book 2 is Visions of Heat, and I just finished this tonight, and this is Faith's story. So as I said before, we are learning that there are different types of Psi that have been repressed, and we learn that Sascha is an E-Psi, and so she's an empath, but we don't discover that until we go through the story. Now we're introduced to Faith, and Faith is an F-Psi, and Faith is, when you're introduced to her, she is robotic, typical Psi, no emotion, has no understanding of emotion whatsoever. She's been isolated her entire life because she is so valuable to the Psi community, because she nets them billions of dollars a year, because she sees the future. So the F is for forecasting. She can see the future, and she forecasts deals and all kinds of things that net businesses lots of money. So she's very valuable. So as a result, she's constantly honing that skill, and she's isolated as a result of that, because they don't want her to come in contact with anyone. And so through a set of circumstances, she comes in contact with a changeling named Vaughn, and Vaughn is part of the same pack that Lucas is the alpha for. So he's one of the sentinels, and he is not a leopard changeling. He is a panther changeling. And how he comes to be, he's jaguar. He's a jaguar. And how he comes to be in their pack is because something happens early on in his life where his parents die, and his sister also dies. And Lucas finds him and adopts him and brings him on, but he's still scarred from this experience. And so as a result, he's very isolated, and he doesn't really relate to others. And basically, this is their story of coming together and relating to one another, both being isolated, both being hard to understand, hard to get to know. And I feel like their story was fleshed out a little bit better, in that they're not easy characters. They're really difficult characters. But once she recognizes and understands that she has this bond with him, and that he is not going to hurt her and that he cares for her. When you see their relationship develop, it's really beautiful. And it's a really, really good story. And I like at the end, I thought like was really pretty good, because I think it helps to really explain, because I was thinking about it, I was like, how do I explain this community, this, you know, the psych net, and, you know, what all this means. But they say here, these were the sparks born of an empath, the single functioning empath in the world, the only one who escaped the torture of silence, of the silence. So there's this thing called the silence, and they're trying to overcome, the Psi group was trying to overcome the silence, and when they did that, they created much more damage in the population. And you'll read about that as you go. But it says, it was the lack of working empaths in the Psi net that had sentenced the F-Psi to certain madness. Yes, to be born a foreseer was to be born with a higher chance of madness. But before silence, it had been a tiny percentage of a minority who succumbed, not the majority. The council didn't understand that in its attempt to purge the E designation from the net, so empath, emotion, any of it, to just purge it from the net, it also destroyed the F designation in so many others, so this ability to forecast. Because everything was connected, everything had a purpose. You don't do something and it has no impact. When you do something, it impacts so many other things in ways that you can't even foresee, and that's what we're seeing here. The psych net was no longer fully functional, but the web of stars was. It was different from the Psi net, and always would be, because this web had rainbows and sunshines and emotions and hearts and predatory hunger and utter loyalty. Now those sparks healed the broken pieces of faith, and she